Welcome to the Thursday, November 9th, 2023 Webster Town Board Workshop. We have two agenda items tonight, and we'll start out with our Police Chief Dennis Kohlmeyer and Police Captain Mark Reed. They have a presentation on Lexapol, which is the Police Policy and Procedure Manual.
Thank you,
I
sir.
hand it to you, Dennis.
Good evening. So before I jump into the presentation, I guess I wanted to give a little background onto what it's about and why we're doing it. Because I know we've talked before, both through the budget process and at prior meetings about Lexapol and the policy and procedure manual that we were looking to transition the police department to. So as we've done with every other process that we've had to make changes to, instead of just trying to make the quick change, we've tried to dive into the process and make sure that we're doing it thoroughly and efficiently and covering all our bases. So towards the end of 2022, we were being swamped by the amount of changes that were being made to law enforcement policies and procedures through different mandates through New York State law, federal court cases, things like that. And up to that point, everything gets done in-house. So somebody in-house has to be made aware of the new mandate or requirement, and then we have to try to find verbiage to put into a policy. Sometimes that is borrowed from other agencies, but it was a very large task, and it was almost impossible to keep up with it, with the amount of changes that were being made. So we tried to look at what some other agencies were doing, and there's a couple of legal services out there that provide manuals that are compliant with New York, not only laws, but accreditation standards. So we researched a couple of those and selected Lexapol as the vendor that we wanted to use to create a new police policy manual. So we went down that road. We've been working with them to update our policy. So basically what happens is they have a legal team that creates a policy manual based on federal laws, state laws. I'll get into this in the presentation, but to get the high level stuff, New York State accreditation standards, and then law enforcement best practices. And as we were doing this, we're also doing the research in the background about how to consolidate the different manuals we have. So we have the employee handbook that the town board issues to every employee of the town. But then we had separate rules and regulations and general orders for the police department. So we were trying to make sure we cover our basis and make it a clear process for our employees to understand what policies and they're being held to. And part of that research was getting some perspective on who and how are the general orders the police department issued. So in the 20 plus years I've been there, the chief of police issues general orders as necessary, and there really is little to no town board involvement in the development of that policy or the implementation of it. And particularly the rules and regulations are going to be incorporated into the new policy manual. And based on that, I wanted to do a presentation to the board about what we found as far as how policy has been done in the past with the town of Webster and how we think it should be done in this case to make sure that the board has oversight of the police department and police manual process. So New York Town Law 150 allows for the creation of a police department. New York Town Law 154 outlines the administration of that police department. So in New York Town Law 150, the town board has the authority to create a police department and then to manage the police department to either create a police commission or designate the town supervisor to be the police commissioner, or as a default, the town board manages the police department with the authority of that section. So we asked the town clerk to do some research on what had previously been done in the town of Webster, and we found a couple references in the 70s that at one point they designated the town supervisor to be the police commissioner for a specific period of time, but that expired. And then there's some later reference in 1979 to the town board exercising the authority of the section as the police commission to make some changes within the police department. So we've found nothing since that designates a police commissioner or delegates the authority of the town supervisor to be the police commissioner. So the ask here is at the end of the presentation, at a later date, after we've answered whatever questions are available, it would be my hope that the town board, as the legal body that's exercising the laws of town, New York Town Law 154, votes to implement this policy manual. So I wanted to do a presentation on what it is and what work we've done with it up to this point before I make that request. So that's the high level of why we're here, and wanted to give you context before we jumped into actually what Lexipol is and why we are seeking to use it. Any questions so far? Okay. So Lexipol is basically a compliance software process. Not only do they give us the ability to have a police manual that's been vetted by a legal team and is in compliant with the laws, it goes through and helps you maintain in compliance through a software program. Currently, the way we do general order policy stuff is we have PDF copies available to the members to access on the network. But there isn't a good mobile solution for them to access any of our policies in the field when they're out trying to make decisions. So wrapped up in this contract is the process of vetting our current policies, establishing a software system that makes them accessible, creating a training system for the officers to stay up to date with them, and then a management portion to update the policies as the laws change. So the way the policy content works is each policy that you create has tags on it for the different levels of compliance, so that you know where the request is coming from and why it's part of the policy. So it helps us educate the officers and employees as to why we're doing things. So you have your federal, state, best practice, and discretionary. So really you can't make any changes to federal and state. Best practices are ones that they take the law enforcement community as a whole and provide recommended policy, and then we go through and tailor those recommendations to our operation and our needs as a town. And then discretionary, they put things in there that, again, may not apply to your town, like, for example, like a SWAT team or a bomb team and things like that, that we don't offer those services, so they're not required to be part of the policy. So one of the other complicating things with our current system that we were using with the general order process is that all of our operational stuff was kind of wrapped into one manual, and so it was very hard to track what employees are required to do in specific instances. So this content gets broken up into 3 different areas, and it's good to have a policy section that is very specific and direct to make sure the employee knows what they can and can't do. But then it allows us to get down more into the weeds in the procedure section. So the policy section kind of outlines the high level, this is what you're authorized. The procedure section is how we as the administration want it to be done here in the town of Webster. And again, the training component is one of the things that's really required of police departments when it comes to being defensible in lawsuits and civil action. It's not only having a policy, it's making sure that the employees were trained to that standard, and then the supervisors held them to them. And then if there are instances that show that the officers or employees didn't perform to that standard, that we're actually taking appropriate action to remediate that or to discipline to prevent further occurrences of it. For those that are far away from this, it's hard to read. My expectation isn't that you read each word, it just kind of highlights the side by side of how they're currently being done and then how Lexipol does it from a display point of view. So it allows us to see not only where their basis comes for that section, like whether it's a best practice or a state law, it tags what accreditation standards apply to it. So for those that don't know, the Webster Police Department is a New York State accredited police department, and we get reaccredited every 5 years. And part of that process is making sure that our policies stay in accordance with accreditation, but also that our practices do as well, that we show proof that we're actually following the policies and have to do that every year for the reaccreditation that occurs in a 5-year cycle. So it helps us stay on top of the administration. So the other large benefit to it is the user interface for the employees so that they can access the policies in a way that's efficient for them. So if they're on a traffic stop and they have to tow a vehicle and they have a question about search procedures in relation to towed vehicles, this software program is on all their mobile devices and MDTs that allows them to reference those to have more accurate decision-making. But one of the large things for us is that the system alerts us as the administration to recommended changes. And so when a new law is passed or a court ruling happens, the Lexipol legal team looks at that and categorizes that change into like a critical or major or minor policy update. And then what it does is it sends you alerts, and then once you click on the alerts, it starts to give you the policies that are affected by those changes. And then when you go deep into it, it actually tells you what the reason for the change is. So I know I went through those slides pretty quick, but they're all kind of tied together to show how it breaks down the information for the police leadership so that we then can update our policies. And so they'll update the wording or the recommended wording. We'll go in and look to see if it was any of the wording we changed as part of our tailoring to our operation. If it is, we make those corrections, and then we can immediately disseminate that to all the officers. So it cuts down on the time delay in us being made aware of a problem, trying to develop a policy for it, and then updating our policy so that operationally we're in compliance with whatever the change was. I'm rolling kind of quick through this. Anybody have any questions as I go, or you want to wait to the end? Okay. So this kind of just compares some of the differences between our current and the Lexipol when it comes to daily training bulletins. Like I was referencing before, when it comes to making sure officers are aware of our policy so that it then can be in compliance with them. Right now, if we want to develop any kind of training or testing in relation to a policy, we have to develop that in-house and then disseminate that. Built into this program is a daily training bulletin that allows the officers to be refreshed on policy, and it comes with a testing component so that we can show that not only are we educating them on it, we're checking their ability to comprehend it. And so if there's a lawsuit that's filed or some sort of civil action that we have to defend, not only can we show that we have a policy, we disseminated the policy, we trained them on the policy, the officer actually showed compliance with the policy, and if or knowledge of the policy by passing a test. And then if they don't, then obviously there's some remedial action that needs to be taken in order to bring that officer up to speed. So I guess for a lack of a better term, it's a pretty comprehensive package that allows us to have kind of default legal help to make sure that our policies are appropriate and that we're creating the right expectations for the employees. So, like I said, the policy side of it, we've been working on. We've gone through that process. Captain Reed can speak to it if you have any questions. He's taken the brunt of the work, and it's been between like 5 and 7 policies a week that he's gone through to vet and change the wording and tailor it to our organization. So it hasn't been an easy process, but in my opinion, it's one that will set the town up for success, both for our employees to operate in the field and be aware of what's required of them, and then for us to be in a position where we can manage that process and then defend our actions based on having a manual that I think that's up to speed and up to date.
So all of your, and each of your officers are going to have access to this. And are they expected to go on daily? They're supposed to like check every day? This would be something like checking your calendar to see if there's any updates.
Yes.
Is that how it's going to work?
Yep, so what we've done is, as the board's aware, we've gone to a system where we've issued a mobile device to every officer. And the software is actually on that device. So they have a personal electronic device that they'll carry around, and they'll have the updates immediately to the phone, so that they're aware of it when they're working, and then they can access it through that device to answer any questions they have in the field, to make decisions.
Is there going to be, I don't want to use the word alarm, but is there going to be some kind of a tag or notification if there's a change in policy, or are they just expected to look and see if it every day without?
They get a notification. I don't know if you can speak.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I get notified before anything. I get advised, like what you saw in the presentation right there. I get notified immediately of that. I review the policy immediately, and then it takes it into a draft form as I make changes. And I have to put it back into approved form, and I push it back out to everybody. As soon as I push it out, they all get alerted of the policy change.
Alert, that's the term.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's
a
all,
better
yeah, they
term.
get
Okay.
like push notifications, it would be similar to, of policy
So
notification.
what about when you're not around?
So they actually,
You're on vacation or you're out for whatever reason, who's gonna do it if you're not gonna be doing it? Is there somebody else?
Yeah, so the administrative lieutenant, operations lieutenant, and myself all have access to the back end
So
of the
there's
system.
always gonna be somebody it's not gonna be just Captain Reed all the
Correct,
time.
yes.
This is, obviously, it's, as you said, federal and state mandates in the policy, and the rest of it is sort of internal.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more tailored to Webster Police Department.
Yeah,
So everything that's coming through, somebody, who's feeding it to you? I mean, because it's gonna be both federal and state.
so
So somebody's gotta really be looking at all changes in the laws. It's a pretty heavy,
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's the Lexipol legal team, so
Okay.
they have people designated in each state to be the legal authority for them in that state. So New York State is Mike Rinaldi. So he's a former police chief and attorney out of Colony Police Department, I believe it is, in Albany area. He's their legal lead for New York State. So when there's case law updates and whatever, he is the Lexipol representative that goes through and manages the legal team that changes the policies and creates the recommended wording. And then they push it to us. So it doesn't matter if it's a federal, state change or a change in best practice. They review it first, they create the draft document, they send it to the organization, and then we modify it as necessary.
is Lexipol a government or is it a government contractee?
It's gotta be a contractee, so they're a for-profit national company that operates in pretty much every state. They have a competition or competitor,
Power DMS.
Power DMS, the Daigle Law Firm. That's another renowned police attorney that created a competing package. So
Is Lexipol required?
no. So again, let me highlight something that I wasn't even aware of when we went to this. PERMA actually recognizes this as a best practice. So PERMA offers a grant for 30% of the annual subscription fee if you share with them the fact that you implemented, I think it's 7 or 8 specific policies. So we actually get a grant annually now to pay for the 30% of the subscription fee through PERMA. So New York State,
Is that going to continue?
yes, that's an annual grant, from
Okay.
my understanding.
I assume,
And so the other thing I haven't checked
Yeah.
to see if through any insurance providers, if there's any discounts applied for having a policy manual that's updated that consistently and through a vetted process. So we'd have to look into that as well. I know when we do our insurance audits and stuff, our policies in the police department obviously are a big portion of the discussion, so I would have to kind of look at that.
yeah, how long is how long has Lexipol been in existence? If you know.
I don't know. We've had these conversations before I retired, so it's at least back like 2015, 16 timeframe.
So there's a history here, there's some kind of measurements they can look at and standards they can look at as far as how the effectiveness of Lexipol.
Yes, and so what we did before we signed on to it is, there's two other agencies in Monroe County that use it and have been using it, so we sat down with them and talked about how they use it and whether it was beneficial or not. And when we pull our hair out about changing policy, they were just clicking buttons, updating policy. They were very happy with the process.
Okay.
What's the cost annually?
It's about $14,000 annually.
14,000?
Correct. And then there's a 4,000, well, so 30% of that grant that we receive.
4,200.
Yeah.
We did the contract back in January, and I think we did a board resolution for this contract, because I had to sign it.
You definitely signed it. We paid for it out of drug asset seizure money, so we paid the initial, there was two components to the initial portion. One is the first year subscription, and the other one was the professional services portion of the contract, where weekly we met with one of their representatives to go
Yeah.
through and create policy changes. So it was part of the drug asset seizure for the 2023 costs, and then we put it in the budget for 2024.
It's interesting because if I understood it correctly, we did general orders. It's a little ambiguous as far as how those general orders got done, because we had two resolutions we found at the town board level in the 1970s, one being town supervisor as a commissioner per municipal law of state 154, and the other one years later was the town board and there's been nothing in the last 44 years since. So I'm really not sure how general orders were handled in the past. But the one thing I do know is that in the last couple of years, the change in law enforcement, discovery rules, what the DA's office is looking for, we have to be above reproach. And that's why I know Patty Cataldi is the liaison to police and myself in the meetings we've been in with you. This made a lot of sense to really put us in a position to be above reproach. So, and if I understand you correctly, Dennis, your ask in the future is for the town board to approve the implementation of this, basically superseding general orders.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially, the dilemma that I see is this. On a routine basis, the chief of police has created general orders for the police department to follow. To me, that does not seem consistent with New York Town Law 154, where the authority comes from the board to do that. We couldn't find any resolution that authorizes the chief of police to create policy for the police department outside of the authority of the board. So that's part of the discussion, I think, for the workshop is when the board, if they decide to adopt this as the police manual for the police department, should there be some wording in there about the maintenance of that program, so that every policy, there's times where every day something might get changed in this policy. I don't think it would be maybe not necessary to come to the board every single time that a policy wording gets updated. So
No.
I guess the maintenance of it is the other component to it. So approving it and then having some sort of wording that comes from the authority of the board to maintain the policy.
Well, and I don't want, Bill and Ginny, if you have questions or comments, I'll let you certainly jump in.
So the 30% discount annual grant from Palmer, is that already included with the 14,000, or is that?
No, that was before the grant. So the annual subscription fee that we'll pay, like the net price of us will be about $10,000.
And that annually?
And that would be annually, yes.
And they're not gonna change or, go up whenever time you have a new implement,
Well, I would assume at some point there'll be a price increase. We're in a contract right now, so that is a contractual price, but I'm sure at some point there'll be some sort of increase to that cost.
But then this will be compliance for the state and the federal, like you said. So you do it just, instead of going through it manually, like with the hard copies, This way, you would have, the software to do the work, right? To have all the access for you, make the time more efficient?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Chief, do you have an idea of when you want to have a resolution on the town board agenda for us to implement this?
From my perspective, in the next couple of weeks, if that's possible.
Okay, well, then the reason why that's important to know is obviously Councilman Abbott is retiring. His last board meeting is December 21st. It would be advantageous to do that by then, because if we don't, then I certainly want to make sure that the new town board member is brought up to speed on this. Patty totally understands it because she's the liaison. I will make sure Councilman Cahill, who couldn't make it tonight, watches this video and sees the comments and questions, and then tenders any other ones that he may have.
Yeah, so from my perspective, we're ready for implementation with the exception of, I think there's about 10 policies that we're going to ask the union to review for their perspective on it, just to make sure that there's no grievance issues that come along with that. And then we'll be ready to roll them out. So in total, I believe there's 170 or so.
About 160.
160 policies. We're down to about 10 that are going to have some discussion on them. So once the board's ready and doesn't have any more questions, then I'll be ready for implementation.
Anything else, gang?
Thank you.
Thanks, Cap and Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, next up, we have a presentation on the proposed amendment to the current Article 9 Energy Performance Contract between Navitas and the Town of Webster on the wastewater treatment plant project. And in comes Art Patrone and Rick Canali from our town, from the Town of Webster, and also Dennis Clough from Navitas. So,
And if I can take a moment, I'd like to introduce Angus Sunday, who's the newest member of our construction team, who's implementing the project down at the Resource Recovery Facility.
how you doing,
Not
Angus?
just like that, I hope.
No, he dressed up for you tonight. Looks good, too.
He's good. Okay, start with questions. Okay, we're back again. As you all know, we've started construction at the wastewater treatment plant. We're well underway, and as part of our planned progress, if you will, we have a amendment, and we're to that point of construction. We want to share that with you. So the reason we're doing the amendment is to really continue efficient delivery of the project. We've talked about elongated lead times on equipment, electrical components, things like that. And also with Fairlife coming in, we've really done a pretty good job of simultaneous construction and design. And that is just ongoing and will be ongoing through the spring. Correct. So this amendment will keep us on target and really on schedule. So just a little look back on the project, the project timeline. We started project design in March of 2022 through April of 23. In May of 23, Fairlife selected Webster. And really throughout that design portion and through May and even till now, they have been a big factor in how we move forward and how we manipulate our construction sequences. June 2023, we broke ground, and we also again continued work on the Fairlife impact and how that's going to impact Rick and his team and how we work at the plant. September 2023, we've confirmed those impacts of Fairlife. Here we are in November with an amendment. And the second amendment is scheduled to be in front of you in spring of 2024. and I will turn it over to Dennis.
So what I wanted to do is take a couple minutes and give you a sense of where the work is with regards to the contract that we have now and then the amendment. So what I want to do is give you a sense of the work that at that point will be under contract, and then what remains that would then come in the amendment for the springtime. So some of the work here, the work that is in the red boxes is the work that is under contract. So just sort of walking through it from the headworks and the service building. So all of the work that, all of the improvements in those two facilities will be included in the contract at that point, along with also with the primary clarifiers. You'll see in the upper left, the relocation of the village sewer line is a requirement because of the Fairlife work. I'll show you later, we're gonna be building a fourth aeration basin to that location, and we need to move that village line so there's a place to put that fourth tank. So that work is in here as well. Art and Rick, anything you want to add with regards to this piece of the work?
So just as sort of a frame of reference, that village effluent line, would, for easiest terms, it runs underneath that north-south road there. And that's why it needs to be relocated. The fourth aeration basin will exactly match what we have, just be to the east of the three that are there.
So moving over to some of the other parts of the plant, the expansion and upgrades to the administration building will all be under contract at that point. And then up there in the solids handling building, there is all of the facility improvements are in there, and we are starting some of the work on the process side, the demolition of the existing equipment, the work on the secondary digester tank. The work in that building was pretty substantially affected by Fairlife, so that work is in the design stage at this point. And then on the back side of that plant where the new gravity thickener will be located. And then I also have there's also some site-wide work that's underway. Under contract already is the purchase of all the major equipment for processes, long lead time items. We're in the process of procuring those. In addition, the fiber optic network loop at the site, lighting, and then electricity and natural gas needs to be, the service to be upgraded because of the new loads and facilities at the plant. Art and Rick, anything to add here?
Maybe we can just touch on, with major process equipment. We've already ordered bar screens, the Beast, the receiving station. I believe they're out measuring last week and this week for all the primary components. There's just numerous pieces and parts.
By the end of the year, we will have ordered the dryer, the new anaerobic digester tank, the dewatering equipment. Nearly every piece of the major equipment will be purchased by year end, I think with the exception of the aeration blowers, which are still being designed and sized at this time.
Correct.
Okay. And then up at the front of the plant, this is where all the new facilities are going. The demolition of the existing trickling filter. The large metal dome is already gone if you go down to the plant and see it. And then up in that area is where we'll be building the new high-strength waste receiving station, the dried product storage. And at this point, we'll be under contract for the new biosolids and outside waste facility for the building itself and the foundation. So part of trying to keep us efficient is that there's still about 3 months of design work to do on that. That'll happen during the winter time, so that then when winter is done, we can move right into the construction of the building, and that times out nicely for when the major equipment arrives. We'll have a building ready to start to set equipment. And then the last thing I'll point out there is that on the left-hand side, that relocation of the electric utility line, you can see that that's above ground lines that are there. They need to be moved and actually buried so we have room for the road to be relocated and the new primary anaerobic digester. So that work is underway as we speak. Art and Rick, anything?
And I think a lot of these things in this amendment allows us to get ready to transition from old operation to new operation. So a lot of this stuff sets us up so it's a smoother transition with the new equipment into the new process.
Is the trickling filter gonna be replaced, or is it just you're gonna use a different?
So the trickling filter is entirely demolished. So
It
it's
is
gone.
now.
All of the rock and foundation will be removed. In essence, in that location, the new dry product storage building will be there, and where the dryer facility is located, the new solids building there, Both of those are, their foundations will be in that place, so that rock and foundation from the existing trickling needed to be removed.
Charlie, on that, I think the question you're asking was, that was never really a process for us anyways. It was our backup for the village.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not needed anymore.
That's really what
Yes.
basically my question was.
Understood. Thank you.
Is
Yep.
it something you need to replace? Okay.
Right.
So with that, so that's a sort of a high-level highlight of what will now be under contract to do, and I want to now just take a big picture of what's remaining, because there's work we have under design at this point that the current schedule is that we'll be back in the springtime, currently on our schedule, roughly the April timeframe for the final amendment, which would have us fully under contract for all of the improvements at the resource recovery facility. So back to these slides again, the largest piece of work in this part is actually in the aeration system. So that fourth basin that we talked about, and then literally all of the infrastructure across all the aeration basins, the piping, the headers, fixing the concrete, putting in new diffusers. It's in essence, all of it is being fixed, along within the chem blower building, the new blowers, the new headers, new heating system, electrical infrastructure that's getting pulled in. All of that work is what we're in the process of finishing design on, and that will move into the spring.
And just one thing on that, Dennis,
Thanks,
is
Rick.
there's another reason that this sequence fits into the schedule, is because if we were to do the aeration first, we're gonna have those tanks down, clean them out, but yet we haven't done the headworks yet. So all that stuff is still coming through because of the old infrastructure. So we do the headworks first, front line of defense, then the primaries clean those out, so all that stuff stays clean as we move forward.
And then back up at the head of the plant here, so we, as I talked about before, we're currently under contract to build the biosolids and outside waste facility for the Shell. In the spring contract, it would be setting all the equipment, all of the building systems. We've also got a waste equalization tank to put in, and the anaerobic digester and flare are currently being designed now, because that's part of the calculations of the new loads that will be coming in, both from the town and from Fairlife, so that sizing is underway. And then on the site-wide improvements, really think of it as it's the remaining work to have a full project done. Stormwater, paving, hydrants, site restoration, all of those things that then we'd have under contract, that when the work is done, we can finish everything up nice and cleanly. Art and Rick, anything to add?
No, I would absolutely echo what Rick was saying, that, this is built in such a way that, we're starting from front to back, and especially with the bar screens and primaries and so forth, it's definitely going to save some time and some dollars, because we're not going to have to re-clean all of those tankage.
So in essence, that's our high-level overview of the work we have now and the amendment, and where we'll be going in the springtime. So with that, any questions?
Would that already built in with the cost that we already have set aside for the project, or is it additional?
So the dollars that are coming into the amendment are already part of the bond resolution that the board has passed.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, no, not
It's
additional.
great question, Jim.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Warms my heart having that question, the money question, right? Love it. It's funny because, anybody that's watching this live or watches a tape of it, the cynic in me says, well, why are we amending this contract? Why not a new contract? Is this additional money? Is the town all of a sudden? No. The most recent bond resolution was in July, to I think 80 million. We had done the original contract at around 40 million because that's what we were bonded for. We didn't know if Fairlife was coming to town. We knew we needed to start moving, supply chain issues, all of that. We robustly went through that on workshops and town board resolutions. Once Fairlife came to town and we moved in July to go into the 80 million, that also abutted up to our, I think, $35 million in aggregate that the town applied for in grants pertaining to this wastewater facility. Off the top of my head, I should know this, 20 million approximately for WIA, 10 million for WQIP, and another 5 million for one of those acronyms. That's the one I can't remember. So, and I think, based on the, at least historically, those timelines of when they approve those grants or give answers on them, it probably will be before the calendar year end. So, really what they're asking for on this amendment is just moving from the 40 million to some number, 50 to 60 million, within our already bonded 80 million. But it's the parts that make sense for what they have to move forward on now. Interestingly enough, another question that maybe somebody would have, why are we doing a second amendment in April? Why aren't we just amending to $80 million now? There's several reasons for that, but to me, the most obvious highlights are we are still working out how much of the increase from 5 million gallons a day capacity to 7 million gallons a day capacity is going to be picked up, paid for by Coca-Cola Fairlight. We also, believe it or not, we need to know what kind of grant awards we get. Because like I said, there's 3 different grants that I just described. And interesting enough, and I wish Paul Adams was here, our finance director, because there is a very definitive possibility that we could, and this is for example purposes only, for math only, we could get $10 million awarded on one of those acronymed grants. But because the golden rule, they who have the gold make the rules, the State Department giving that grant may say you need to do certain work with WMBE, or am I saying that correctly? Too many acronyms, which might add $1 million cost to the project.
Correct.
We need to know all of that before we do the final ribbon around it amendment for the contract. I don't think any of us would cry a tear if we netted $9 million in that scenario, 10 million in grant, but it entails an extra $1 million to the project because of and obviously the town board would be made apprised of that all the way along. So it's a fluid process, no pun intended. This does make the most sense. Patty Cataldi, our deputy town supervisor, is liaison to sewer. She's not here tonight. She's been in all these conversations and meetings, and we probably have had 4 or 5 in the last month or 2 on this as to what was the appropriate components to put into this amendment, and which ones could wait until April to put a final ribbon around all this. So if that, at the risk of TMI, I like your slides better than my mouth running, Dennis.
Super, yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, we would all like this to be done in one contract. Obviously, this is a lot of work for all the team, quite honestly, and for you guys as well. But this absolutely makes sense to keep the project going, to deal with those, the supply chain issues, and to meet our timelines. So this is, and again, I think we've discussed this approach in a couple different fashions, and this is going to get us where we need to be. It's going to save us some dollars. It's going to save us some time.
In essence, it's the plan that we agreed upon in May when the Fairlife selection was made, and it's also at this point giving us the ability to continue to move forward efficiently, but at the same time give us time to do good design on the parts that have been affected from where we were before, and ensure that we're designing the systems that are going to give you the ability to meet the Fairlife need in the time frame that you need to have it available. Because now that they're moving dirt out at that site, all of this is real now,
Yes.
and so you do need to be ready with the schedules and the commitments you've made, and this allows us to make sure that happens.
And I'll make sure, I sound like a broken record to our last presentation. I will make sure Councilman Cahill watches this tape. And if he has any other questions or comments, he needs to make sure he tenders those to Dennis or Rick, because this is queued up, I think, for next Thursday's board meeting, the actual resolution for this amendment. And then I also will talk to recently elected Jennifer Wright, because, if this is April of '24, where we're putting a ribbon around this, she needs to start to get caught up on this, because we will not have Councilman Cahill here in April '24, who's been with this process the whole time, who's been in on the 67 board meetings, by the way. You know I love my numbers, 67 board meetings, workshops and board meetings since June of 2021 that we have touched on this project. Bill has it in his head like an encyclopedia. We need to catch up, soon-to-be Councilwoman Jennifer Wright, so. You know what, Bill? That's, in retirement, we gotta get that inside voice inside, don't we?
Any other questions?
Jenny, thank you for asking the money question. Loved it.
Good question.
Try to do my part. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Good question.
Can we bring Bill back in April as a ex officio to vote? Can you do that, Bill? Is that?
Could we bring him back as a special guest speaker?
He'll be too busy being the chair of the comprehensive plan committee. That's not happening. Well, listen, I think that concludes tonight's workshop. I do want to say one thing, and before we leave, and I don't know how it should be, but tonight is the last town board workshop or town board meeting that Karen Buck, our cable director, will be overseeing. I think her last town citizen board meeting is next Tuesday night, the 14th, for the zoning board. But Karen has accepted a position at another employer. From everything I've heard, it's her story to tell. It's a great opportunity for Karen, but I want to thank Karen for all she's done for the town for 19 years. And I don't know if she wants to make a cameo and step out and say anything. She's coming out. Nope, she stuck her head out and said, no. She didn't do that. She did not give me the raspberries.
Excuse me,
But-
Supervisor,
Sure.
before could I say something?
Sure can.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank our veterans on behalf of my family and the town board. I wish all the veterans, my family wouldn't be here without their sacrifice and dedication to this wonderful country. So I just want to, take this opportunity to say thank you to all the veterans this weekend. And God bless all the men and women in, uniforms and everything they have done to this wonderful country.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Bill? All set? Well, everybody, thank you and have a great evening. That concludes our workshop.